Okay, we got activity 4.12, a couple more poems today. There's some good ones here. The first one, we can look at the learning targets. Analyze a poem for details, theme, and meaning. Then use the analysis to creatively present the poem to the class using appropriate rate, inflection, and tone. There's going to be one that is going to be hard to do correctly on your own because it requires two people to do it. So we'll get through what we can do on our own if you're doing this remotely, or as a review for yourself if you just needed some extra instruction. Alright, so the first one is a free verse poem from Gary Soto, who we read a story from him earlier in the year. He wrote The Jacket. So as you read the free verse poem, is what you're doing while you read the poem. Underline punctuation to show when to slow down or pause during your oral delivery. And then circle unknown words and phrases. Okay, so go ahead and pause it while you do those two things. Alright, so after you read the poem, number 1, what is the theme? Support your answer with the details from the poem. Okay, sometimes that's a tough one. So remember, theme is what the speaker learns, what the author would like us to learn, or what life lesson or big idea comes from the poem itself. Number 2, which words in the first stanza of the poem? So if we haven't talked about this yet, a stanza is like a paragraph or an essay. So it's the first chunk of, you can see where the stanzas are, they're broken up, there's a little space. So in an essay, those would be called paragraphs. In a poem, they are called stanzas. So which words in the first stanza of the poem contribute to the theme? We're relating number 1 and 2 together there. Number 3, which words in the poem show that the author likes the girl? Number 4, which details in lines 30 to 42 help convey the theme of the poem? So they even give you a hint on where to find the theme. Explain what guided your reading pace and inflection when you read this free verse poem. How did you know when to insert pauses? I kind of gave you a hint of that earlier. Okay, poem number 2 is an old poem. Author Lewis Carroll, who wrote Alice in Wonderland, also wrote, this is actually in this poem, part of it is in the cartoon version of Alice in Wonderland. I can't remember on the live action one if it's in it. But this is a poem called Jabberwocky. I like this poem. This one's fun to read out loud if you've had some practice with it, because there's some made-up words. So obviously, circle unknown words and phrases. You're going to have a lot in this one because the author makes up some words, and it's kind of fun to try and imagine what the author meant by these words. So that's kind of, you have to describe. So some of those made-up words are also described in the Jabberwocky, which they give you a picture. Here's a picture of the Jabberwocky, and the person with the sword going snicker-snack. Okay, so the Vorpal blade. So this one's going to be tough. Hopefully we'll be able to read this one on together, and I have a couple cool videos of different versions of this poem. They're fun to listen to and watch. But after you do that, so go ahead and pause as you read through the poem and identify all of the ridiculous new words that Lewis Carroll made up. And that will help you answer. Number 5, which nonsense words from lines 20 to 24 remind you of other words you know? How do these words impact the meaning of the poem? So it's just asking you for a portion of those made-up words there in that question. Next one, explain how the rhyming at the ends of the lines affects your reading pace and inflection. How is this reading pace different from reading a free verse poem? So the first poem by Gary Soto and the second poem are very different in their style and their form. So how did that change how you read them? And then the third poem is going to be difficult for you to read by yourself because it is meant to read with 2 people. So hopefully we'll be able to do this one together. But in case you have somebody at home, you can do this. Well, one person reads the left, one person reads the right, and if the words are lined up, you read them together. So like both of you would say light, and then the person that's reading the right one would read this line, and then you would both read it, and then the left person would read this line, and so on. So it takes a little bit of practice. It's pretty fun when it works out right, though. It sounds cool. Number 6, what are some examples of figurative language in the poem? What types of figurative language are used? Number 7, what are the differences between fixed form poetry, like limericks that have they have specific rules to follow, and free verse poetry? How does each type of poetry affect how the author expresses ideas? What are the benefits of each type? So what did you like and dislike about each of them? What maybe differences did you notice? And if you were going to be a poet, how would that affect which one you chose? Number 8, how might alliteration strengthen a poem or performance? Alliteration is the repetition of consonant sounds at the beginning of words. So Sally sells seashells by the seashore uses S a lot, and that would be alliteration. You can practice that on your own too. Or Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. That's a fun one too. That also uses alliteration. The choral reading part, that'll have to be together in class, so don't worry about those. And then if we get that far, you'll be able to fill in this Venn diagram. Alright, thanks guys.